In a world where millions gather around screens, plan parties and debate plays for weeks, there's a particular group of people who remain completely indifferent. They're not watching, they're not pretending to care, they're simply unmoved. What if this lack of interest isn't social deficiency or missing out, but actually reveals something fascinating about how their minds work? Psychology tells a very different story than you might expect. The psychology and neuroscience behind cultural disinterest reveals surprising insights about personality, cognition, and what psychologists call selective engagement. In this video, you'll discover 7 psychological traits that explain why some people remain genuinely indifferent to major cultural events like the Super Bowl. Stay until the end. The final insight reveals why this trait might actually be linked to higher levels of certain cognitive abilities. Psychology reveals that people who don't conform to mass cultural participation often score higher on what researchers call need for cognitive autonomy. This is the brain's drive to form opinions and interests independent of social pressure. While mirror neurons make humans naturally inclined toward group behavior, some individuals have stronger executive function in the prefrontal cortex that essentially overrides social conformity impulses. If you genuinely don't care about the Super Bowl while everyone around you does, it actually shows your brain prioritizes authentic interest over social acceptance. This isn't stubbornness, it's cognitive independence. Studies indicate this trait correlates with critical thinking and resistance to groupthink. Your brain literally asks, "Do I actually care about this?" before engaging rather than automatically joining collective enthusiasm. But there's something deeper happening in how these individuals process information. Neuroscience shows that every brain has limited attentional resources. People who don't care about major sporting events often possess what cognitive psychologists call highly selective attention, filtration. Their brains are exceptionally efficient at determining what deserves mental bandwidth. Research suggests this isn't about being disconnected, it's about being highly discriminating. While some brains find reward in the communal experience itself, these individuals require deeper personal relevance to activate their dopamine systems. The Super Bowl doesn't trigger their reward circuitry, not because something's wrong, but because their neural pathways demand more direct personal significance. If you've ever wondered why you can't force yourself to care about something everyone else loves, this is why. Your brain's filtration system is actually protecting your cognitive resources for things that genuinely matter to you. It's efficiency, not deficiency. Here's where it gets even more interesting. Behavioral psychology reveals that interest in sports requires building what's called a schema, a mental framework that gives context and meaning to events. People who don't care about the Super Bowl often never developed robust sports schemas, not due to lack of exposure, but because their brains allocated developmental resources elsewhere. During formative years, the brain decides which patterns to recognize and value. Some brains built intricate schemas around music, technology, nature, or literature, instead of athletic competition. This isn't a gap in knowledge, it's specialized cognitive architecture. Your brain literally wired itself differently. Psychology shows that trying to force interest in something your brain hasn't built schemas for feels empty and frustrating. If sports never captured your developing mind's attention, the neural pathways simply formed elsewhere. This represents cognitive diversity, not social maladjustment. Those neural resources went somewhere, often toward areas requiring different forms of pattern recognition and engagement. Next, let's examine something most people completely miss. Research in motivation psychology identifies 2 primary drivers: intrinsic motivation, which is internal satisfaction, and extrinsic motivation, which is external rewards like social connection. People indifferent to the Super Bowl typically operate from overwhelming intrinsic motivation. They engage deeply with activities that provide internal fulfillment rather than social currency. The Super Bowl offers primarily extrinsic rewards, shared experience, conversation topics, belonging. For intrinsically motivated individuals, these rewards feel hollow compared to pursuing genuine personal interests. Their dopamine systems literally don't activate the same way for socially driven activities. If you'd rather spend Super Bowl Sunday reading, creating, or pursuing solitary interests, it shows your reward system prioritizes authentic engagement over communal participation. Studies indicate intrinsically motivated individuals often report higher life satisfaction because they're not dependent on external validation. Your indifference isn't antisocial, it's self-directed. But here's what's truly fascinating about this trait. Psychology identifies FOMO, fear of missing out, as a powerful social anxiety driven by the amygdala. People who genuinely don't care about major cultural events demonstrate what researchers call FOMO resistance. Their brains simply don't trigger the same anxiety response when excluded from collective experiences. This isn't apathy or superiority, it's emotional regulation. While some brains interpret not participating as potential social threat, these individuals have different threat assessment mechanisms. Their prefrontal cortex evaluates, am I actually missing something valuable to me, rather than am I missing what others have? Neuroscience shows this trait indicates strong emotional self-regulation and secure attachment patterns. If you can watch millions celebrate something you're not part of without distress, your brain has remarkable emotional independence. Most people miss this. Not caring isn't cold, it's confident. Your sense of belonging doesn't depend on shared cultural participation. Here's something that goes even deeper. Cognitive psychology reveals that brains fall on a spectrum from concrete thinking, which is literal and tangible, to abstract thinking, which is conceptual and theoretical. The Super Bowl is inherently concrete physical competition, measurable outcomes, visible action. People indifferent to it often show preference for abstract cognitive processing. These individuals engage more readily with ideas, concepts, and nuanced thinking rather than straightforward physical contests. Their brains find more stimulation in complexity and ambiguity than in clear winners and losers. This explains why they might be deeply engaged by philosophy, strategy games, or complex narratives while remaining unmoved by sports. Research indicates abstract thinkers often excel in fields requiring theoretical reasoning and innovation. If the Super Bowl feels simplistic or uninteresting to you, it actually reveals how your brain processes information. You're not missing the point. Your brain is literally wired to seek different kinds of cognitive challenge. And now the final insight that ties everything together. Personality psychology identifies this unique combination, high openness to experience paired with low gregariousness. These individuals are intellectually curious and imaginative, showing high openness, but don't derive energy from large group activities, showing low gregariousness. The Super Bowl represents peak gregarious activity, crowds, noise, collective emotion. For people with this personality profile, the event offers nothing their temperament needs. They'd rather engage with novel ideas, deep conversations, or solitary exploration. Their brains are open to experience, just not to experiences centered on mass social participation. Studies show this personality combination correlates with creative professions, independent thinking, and what researchers call comfortable solitude. If you're genuinely content doing something else while the world watches the game, it reveals psychological self-sufficiency. You're open to the world's experiences, just selective about which ones match your authentic nature. The psychology behind not caring about the Super Bowl reveals something profound. Cultural indifference isn't social dysfunction. It's cognitive diversity. These traits, autonomous thinking, selective attention, intrinsic motivation, FOMO resistance, abstract processing, and independent temperament aren't deficiencies, they're signs of minds wired for different forms of engagement and fulfillment. In a world that often equates participation with belonging, choosing authentic disinterest over forced enthusiasm demonstrates remarkable self-knowledge. Your brain isn't broken because it doesn't light up for what activates millions of others. It's specialized, selective, and honest. If you found this valuable, subscribe for weekly psychology insights that help you understand yourself and others better. Next week, we're exploring the fascinating psychology of people who think best in silence. These aren't quirks, they're the architecture of who you are.